So over the past year this game has been out for, there have been a lot of bosses that are added to Doomspire Defense. A lot of them are pretty creative, and some of them are just honestly not even worth being a boss in the first place. But today we're going to be ranking all bosses in Doomspire Defense. Now first, I gotta qualify what exactly is considered a boss in this game. And thankfully for us, that's really easy to figure out. It's just any enemy with an HP bar that appears on the top of the screen. Doesn't matter how much health they have, because I know that there's like a boss with only 200 HP. But we're going to be ranking every boss, like every major boss, every mini boss in Doomspire Defense. So yeah, let's get right into it. Alright, so starting off with the more forgettable bosses, we have the leader skater zombie that appears in the collab event with voxel defenders, and this boss is very forgettable because he doesn't really do anything. He has 135 HP, and all he really does is just go pretty fast, but by that time you're gonna have a bunch of towers that can already like one-shot him, so considering him a boss is honestly just a joke overall. Okay, not too far off from the skater zombie, we now have Soldier 3, which for some reason is a boss on wave 5 for Bloxxer's Dream. And despite being such a weak boss with only 135 HP, he actually does quite a bit of things. He can stun towers, and he's immune to spawner towers. That's really all that he has. He's not that much of a threat. You could pretty much easily kill him with Shielder or Moderator or any other tower that's cheap and reliable for early defense. So next up we have the Meat Shield boss. This guy spawns in on wave 10 and he's called Victim. And all he really does is just protect Abomination from taking any damage on wave 10 because he has like 1000 HP compared to Victim that only has like 300 HP. And when he reaches 100 health, he spawns in a Parasite, but that thing dies in like 5 seconds, so pretty forgettable boss, honestly. So first up with the mini bosses on this list, we have the Juggernaut, and you might be wondering, Planet, why did you put this guy so low on the list? And that's because for a mini boss, for the first boss that you face on yellow mode, he does like one attack, and he's even worse than Dragon Slayer, which is the boss for easy mode that you first encounter. And if you don't place anything near the paths, he doesn't really do anything big, so he's just a meat shield eventually. And honestly, this guy gets spammed later on to the point where he ends up becoming a threat, but as a boss in general, there's just not much going on with this guy. This one just made me question why it even exists in the first place, and that is none other than the Baby Rager. This guy is on the Roadbringer mode, and it's exactly what you think it is. He's just a carbon copy of Roadbringer, but he's even worse. He has less HP, and he's smaller. He's like 3'6", and he's probably gonna die in like 5 seconds with less than 2000 HP. And the only reason why he's higher on this list compared to Juggernaut is because he just does like one more attack than Juggernaut could ever do. He does like 2 attacks, he can dash with his motorcycle, pretty much does the same thing as Roadbringer but even worse. But honestly, this boss is not really that creative because he's just a clone of Roadbringer, but yeah. Okay, and now we got the second event boss on this list so far. We have the Abomination. This guy is on wave 10 of the Bloxxer's Dream side mode, and he only has 1000 HP, but he does way better than any of these bosses on the tier list so far. He can spawn in enemies, he can stun towers, he can blind your towers, causing them to have even less range. So it does take quite a bit of firepower to kill this guy, and I don't think you're gonna kill him that easily with summoner towers. You're probably gonna need like Arsenal or Moderator or even Hyper Laser if you can afford it. And now we have the first boss of Doomspire Defense, which is the Dragon Slayer. This guy has a sword and shield, and he uses his shield to block your towers from attacking him, and his sword is for stunning your towers, so pretty basic boss. Obviously they're not going to do a bunch of things to this guy because he is the first boss that you fight after all on easy mode. So obviously they're not going to make him have a ton of abilities or anything, but pretty decent boss so far. Definitely better than some of the other bosses that we've covered so far. And it's kind of surprising that this guy is better than like 6 other bosses when he's the first boss that you fight, which is honestly insane. Next up we have the Noobcaik. This guy was in Wave 10 of the Release Party Revenge side mode event, and that was for like 10 million and the 1 million visits milestone. I'm pretty sure he was in both events actually, but this guy pies your towers in the face with a piece of cake, and he can leap back, and he also does have this little survivalist force field ability whenever he does, so you cannot damage him as he's jumping back. His only use is really just being a meat shield, because with his little ability that he does by leaping back, he gives other enemies a chance to push forward, like the Pinata Riders and stuff, and the Confetti Rocketeers that appear, but pretty much just serves as a meat shield, only really as a threat on Wave 10, because that's when you first fight him, and you're not going to have too much defenses down by then. And now we actually have our first major boss for this video. We have the Swordmaster. This guy is the final boss of easy mode, and he can slash your towers with his 2 swords. He's pretty much known for his Illumina sword and his Darkheart sword and his big suit of armor that he got in the rewrite, but he slashes your towers, he can stomp on them, and he does a backflip. But that's the thing that makes this guy so weak, is because when he does the backflip, he's gonna go back like a few studs on the path, so it makes it nearly impossible to die to him. And I really hope that this guy comes back in the future, maybe as a side mode boss. Now, could this be the next side mode that comes to the game? I don't know, we'll have to find out. I might be the only one that finds this boss hard, and it's because I tried to solo this event. The Cursed King is a boss from like Wave 15 or Wave 20 of the Voxel Defenders collab event, and this guy is like, I don't even know what's the deal with this guy, but he's just so insanely hard to solo. He can regenerate HP, he stun abuses your towers, and keep in mind, he only has like 1000 HP, but he can gain more out of it. And you just have lack of towers and lack of defense, lack of cash in that game mode. It is so hard to kill this guy if you're not playing with 4 players, and not to mention, your towers can get swapped around because the map was just made like that with that little modifier that it has. And this will also be the same issue for most of the Voxel Defenders bosses later on, is just it all matters because of the map. Alright, now we have Fake Bloxxer. This guy's like a really simple boss. He has 85,000 HP, he's on the Bloxxer's Dream side mode as you would imagine, and all he really does is just walk. That's pretty much it. He just walks, he tanks hits, he's pretty much a meat shield. Nothing too special with this guy. And right after the Cursed King, you actually fight the Mighty Swordsman. This guy's even worse than the Cursed King. He stuns your towers, he summons enemies that do that stupid force field ability, and you would imagine with the map making it hard enough, this guy is just a nightmare to do. Like, if you don't have good towers, you're not going to get the event tower, and that's the problem with most new players that played Doomspire Defense back then. They could not beat this event because of how hard it was. Okay, this is like the only mini boss for the undead coming, but now we have the Amalgamation. This guy also does nothing until he dies. He splits into multiple zombies, and they do go pretty fast, but you're probably going to have spawner towers to take care of them, or Hyper Laser, or Rocketeer. They're not really that much of a threat, just as long as you can kill the Amalgamation before he gets too far, then you can handle his little zombies that he spawns in when he dies. Okay, this might be the first boss that we've covered so far that actually has an interesting mechanic on how you defeat him. This is the Yorick boss. This guy is on like wave 30 of the Bloxxer's Dream side mode, and what you pretty much do is you answer his riddles. They spawn in skeletons and you can lose HP if you get them wrong, but honestly they're the same riddles every time, so as long as you've beaten the game before, if you've beaten the side mode, you can grind it out and pretty much answer the same riddles with the same answers, and then he just ends up not doing anything. So pretty fun boss to fight at first, but as you're like playing the side mode more and more, it does kind of get old easily. If you've seen my video on Admiral Mike, you're probably questioning why I put this guy so high up on this list so far, and that's because, I mean, he's a slightly better general, but his theme is just not there. Like, even if he can kill one tower with his nuke, he's an admiral, but he says he's a mechanic, and he made these robots. Where's this guy's boats and warships at? And the worst part of all is that this guy spawns in way too late. He spawns in on the last wave, and by then, Exponent will already be dead. So you're essentially fighting both bosses separately, which is just the dumbest thing ever. Like, why did they add this guy in the first place? I don't know. They should just remove Admiral Mike. He's kind of pointless. The only reason why I put Mechanical Rager as like higher than Admiral Mike is, I mean, the enemies around him make him pretty hard, but then again, he's just another clone of Roadbringer, does the same attacks, but just has more HP. He has like 28,000 or 30,000 HP, I can't really remember, but the enemies around him, like the robots and stuff, are the real threats when it comes to wave 35, and Mechanical Rager's just a supporting boss at this point. And now we've got Slenderman. This guy comes on wave 20 of the Bloxxer's Dream side mode again, but this time, instead of like Yorick, you have to find his pages and they're random every time, so it is kind of hard to fight this guy on wave 20, but he doesn't move. All you gotta do is just not get near him, and if you get near him, you actually end up losing money. So you can't really die to this guy unless you take too long, but as long as you find the pages quick enough, you've pretty much got this. It's like impossible to die to Slenderman unless you're really bad at the game. Just like Slenderman, Octopus King is another boss that you can't really die to, and he never really ends up attacking your base. He only stuns your towers, and he can blind you with ink. He does summon these rare bosses with like 2000 HP, but it's almost impossible to die to them if you have like at least like a spam of arsenals and other supporting towers. It's just impossible to die to this guy, but he is really fun to fight against despite being like a boss that you can't really die to like Slenderman is. Now we've got the greatest boss in Doomspire Defense, just kidding, we've got Pinata Builder, but he is a part of the greatest event in Doomspire Defense so far. Release Party Revenge was definitely the greatest event, like no joke. This event was not too hard to beat, it was a lot of fun to play and grind, and he was a very simple boss in this event, but sometimes being more simple is just better than being complicated like the other bosses. This guy, Pinata Builder, he summons these pinata minions, and he can stun your towers with his pinata attacks, or confetti attacks, whatever it's called. Pretty simple boss, as I said before, but mostly simple bosses are just better in this game overall. And the fact that he's a part of the best event in Doomspire Defense just makes it even better. Mad Scientist is a classic. Why did I say it like that? Mad Scientist, classic boss on red mode in Doomspire Defense, comes up on wave 25. He can shoot your towers and turn them into apples. That only stuns them, that doesn't really kill them. And he also can literally ram into your towers somehow and kill them. He's also responsible for most of the test subjects and other abominations in red mode. He also made the Mechazom. If you didn't see, Mad Scientist is the one controlling Mechazom in the side mode. This boss is only up here so far because he's pretty iconic in the game overall, but as a boss himself, he's nothing too special. But the fact that you fight him again and again, he gets spammed later on in red mode if you didn't notice already. makes him, I guess, pretty solid boss. Definitely up there as one of the more iconic bosses, and I genuinely think that this guy is kind of on the weaker side, but not really. Now, Minish is probably the weakest boss out of the 4 bosses that are on the Incident side mode, and you might be wondering why he's ranked so low, because he's literally ITrapped and Caleb combined together. But the fact that Ellernate gives you like 1,000,000 cash to rebuild your towers once he bans them and summons Minish, that basically puts you to the point where you actually have more towers than what you started with. And with like 5 max galactic gunners, like 10 hyper lasers maxed out, you're pretty much gonna max out every tower by then, and that's just gonna shred through like the 150,000 HP that Minish has. So he's really only a meat shield, still pretty threatening if you let him get far, because he does both abilities with Caleb and ITrapped, but not too much of a challenge considering you get like 1,000,000 cash. Okay, so Mechazom is, if you haven't played Plants vs. Zombies, he is Dr. Zomboss on the very final stage in the original PvZ game, and he's exactly how he is in game too. He spawns enemies by placing them down with his giant robot hands, and he stands all the way in the back of the map, so you're going to want to put your towers on last, or you can just brute force by killing every zombie that he spawns in. I mean, you're going to probably want to put your towers on last anyways, because it is a mode that you play when you're not really that good at the game, but you're trying to progress. So this is a very fair challenge for new players. I definitely think the side mode itself is harder than the boss, but it is a pretty fun boss to fight, as well as being a callback to the Plants vs. Zombies Dr. Zomboss fight. Now, I was actually surprised to see John Doe make it into the game as a boss, but I mean, Doomspire Defense is a classic Roblox tower defense game after all, so why not include this guy in the game? He is on the Bloxxer's Dream side mode, on the normal mode, and nightmare mode, but not as the final boss for nightmare mode, obviously. And despite only having 500,000 health, he does have a quite large amount of speed. He's way faster than Doombringer on his normal mode, and I actually don't really know if this guy does anything too threatening. I mean, he can downgrade your towers, he can move your towers, but he doesn't do as much damage as Doombringer, and the path is just so long to the point where you're gonna end up killing him eventually, as long as you've got hyper lasers and heavy gunner, I guess. I mean, that was when it was reworked. But John Doe is not really too much of a threat on normal mode. He is definitely harder on nightmare mode though, just by a tiny bit. General is like the cooler brother of Admiral Mike. He's much more iconic, he's an original boss, he nukes your towers, and pretty much to counter him, you just want to have survivalist. Most people that are playing yellow mode are pretty experienced at the game. They have most intermediate towers, maybe some advanced towers, but they do have some exclusive towers like survivalist, maybe even moderators. So as long as you've got someone who knows what they're doing and has decent towers for yellow mode, you can pretty much beat this guy pretty easily. But it's the theming of general that counts, you know, the nukes, the trench coats, and the fact that he's better than an admiral, but he comes much earlier in the game for some reason, so I don't know what to say about that. So, the reason why Matt Paintballer is this high up is not because of his HP, but because of how special he is, if you get what I mean. This man is literally the face of Doomspire Defense. Like, this is probably like one of the top 5 things you think of when you play this game, and that's why so many people cosplay as him. But as a boss for red mode, I guess he's kind of a challenge for new players because he has 1.7 thousand HP and he can stun and blind your screen and towers as well. But overall, pretty iconic boss, and I really hope that they make this guy slightly harder, because red mode is just kind of way too easy right now. Builders Club is kind of a disappointment of a boss because they're really only there to summon Mr. Doombringer on wave 50, but for 3 people as one boss, they do quite a handful of things. They can spawn in these frustrated walls, they got like 30,000 HP, they go all the way to your base. I'm not sure if they can actually kill your base though, they're just kind of there because I guess to just like mess up your targeting with your towers. They can also move your towers around and kill them by deleting them, and they can also move you around. Like, think of this as a Roblox studio boss, you know, they can scale stuff, they move your towers, they can delete stuff, and they can spawn in stuff. So I mean, I just wish these guys had more to them other than just being filler, because everything else in red mode is not really that filler. Like, even the mad scientist, he's kind of hard to kill on red mode if you're trying to solo it. But Builders Club, I mean, he dies in like the first 30 seconds, so definitely could use some work. The Nutcracker is the final boss, well, not really the final boss, but is the second to last boss in the winter event with 850,000 HP, goes pretty fast, can attack and freeze your towers, but overall is just a huge letdown because most people who played the event and grinded out can kill this guy in like 20 seconds with advanced towers. But the event, you gotta keep this in mind, the event is designed what did I just say there? The event is designed for people who don't have advanced towers, people who have like Arsenal, Baller, Mr. Tick, Spawn, anything that isn't like Hyper Laser or Galactic Gunner. And I feel like, honestly, this would be a hard boss if most people just had bad towers, but because a bunch of people have Galactic and all the advanced towers in the world, it's really just a letdown. But I gotta say, cool design, cool hat that goes to Frosty, and cool attacks that do decent damage to towers by freezing them, but it's just sad to see him die in like 25 seconds and not get to use all of his attacks at once. This might be like the first boss that I actually struggle with and still struggle with to this day, but that is none other than Caleb244, because I mean, if you've played the Incident, you know that this guy is probably the most annoying boss out of all the 4 bosses in Incident, and that's because his 2 attacks just happen way too often. Like, he heals 10,000 HP, he's got 100k HP, he eats one of your towers, which kills them, but you get your money back, which doesn't really matter that much, and then he stuns all your towers. So 2 of the 4 advanced towers are already going to be a terrible option for this. Machinery and Heavy Gunner, both of them charge up, so they're really not worth bringing. So your only 2 options is to get Hyper Laser or spend all your bricks just to get Galactic Gunner, but you're better off handling it with Hyper Laser. It's just a lot of randoms make this way harder than it should be, and me specifically, when I try to grind Incident, everyone does this. They never use Hyper Laser, they use any other tower that's just gonna not even help on Caleb, and that's why this boss is so hard for people. Roadbringer is also pretty popular ever since the rewrite came out, and he also has his very own modifier, which is pretty much a side mode because the enemies are all different and there's only 20 waves. But Roadbringer by himself on wave 20 of yellow mode, pretty hard to fight against. He has like 5,000 HP. Don't forget the shield HP that he has, so you want to use something that pierces through his shield, and fighting him that early on, especially when he does this motorcycle dash, he can be kind of a challenge for new players and more experienced players who have like advanced towers if you're playing like on a hard map. But Roadbringer on yellow mode, I guess he's pretty much a decent challenge, and on the Road Rage mode himself, he's more so of like a peon that gets spawned in from like Roadbringer, so I guess he can be also kind of threatening, but he's just mainly used for like tanking hits in that mode. Where yellow mode, he is more of like the main character of wave 20 basically. Right after Roadbringer, this is probably the hardest mini-boss of all Doomspire Defense, but we've got the Traffic Precipitator, and he plays more as a supporting mini-boss because when you fight him on wave 10, he has 5,000 HP, so you can't really rely on pizza places or any other summoner towers. You probably want to get like Galactic Gunner for this. But he speeds up enemies, and he spawns in enemies as well, if that's worse. And the fact that the Road Rage side mode has a bunch of enemies that go way too fast, like the convertible, speeding them up with the Traffic Precipitator is even worse. And he stuns, not to mention that as well. He has a Stomp stun ability, classic stun ability every boss has. But this guy, bro, I'm so glad that he's not in any other mode, at least I think so. I really hope they don't add him again, because I do not want to be fighting this guy along with like a ton of other enemies that get speed boosted. Cozy and Winternao are pretty much the same boss, they just do completely opposite things. Cozy now uses a flamethrower to light up your towers on fire, I guess, and Winternao freezes your towers, but their logic kind of cancels out, because like, what would happen if your towers get frozen and then Cozy now just unfreezes them with a flamethrower or thaws them out? So that doesn't really make that much sense, but I gotta say, pretty cool boss duo. There's not much bosses in this game where it's like two of them at once and they correspond to each other. But Cozy and Winternao, I gotta say, these are amazing mini bosses for the winter event. And despite being really easy to kill if you have like advanced towers, they're pretty much a decent challenge. One of them does get buffed when the other one dies, which is kind of like cube defense. ITrapped is probably my favorite boss of all time in Doomspire Defense, and that's because the way that his mechanics match up to his actual character, because if you didn't know, the incident was based off of the 2012 hacking, and ITrapped is responsible for crashing the entire Roblox economy, and that's exactly what he does in game. He takes away your money, he kills your Mr. Ticks when he spawns in, he cuts your money in half when he's on rage mode, and when he dies, he takes away all of your money. Not to mention, he also spawns brick planeteers, so you're going to want to upgrade everything as fast as possible before you just lose all your cash. And I mean, eventually you'll gain it back on like wave 25 because of Ellernate, but still, pretty fun boss to fight against, and it's not as annoying as Caleb244 is, but definitely up there with the more cooler bosses. I gotta say, ever since the rewrite came out, Exponent has gotten a massive buff.
And you know what else is massive? No taper fade. You know what's crazy?
As I was saying, Exponent, he has 150,000 HP. That's like double the HP that he had before rewrite, and he has way more abilities now. He kind of reminds me of the robotic overseer from Tower Blitz, but he has a minigun, he has a jetpack now. I mean, I'm pretty sure he still has a jetpack, but the Exponent before the rewrite only had like a rocket launcher and a jetpack, and that was it. But this guy, he's a full war machine, and he's just such an amazing boss for yellow mode. Even if a total idiot built this guy known as Admiral Mike, Exponent himself, pretty cool guy. And I used to think that Exponent was actually a person behind the mask, but looks like it's just nothing more than a robot. But I would love to see this guy come back as like a Mark II, maybe for like a future side mode, but the amount of times I said this already, it's just insane. I know what you're thinking. You might say Ellernate is probably the best boss out of all the incident ones just because he's the final boss, but no, it's because his attacks are actually really cool in the way that they respond to his voice lines, which are from Ultra Kill. This is actually what Minos Prime says, and for example, his crush attack, he takes out a giant text box with the word crush on it and slams it down and stuns your towers as he says it from Minos Prime himself. And then Judgment, you know, the lightning attacks, and then I'm pretty sure, like, I think, yeah, he kills your towers at some point when he says die, And then there was like one attack where he can spawn in these server breakers, which are invincible to your towers, and they only have 1 HP, but their whole point is to slowly kill off your base. So if you don't have general, try and speedrun this guy before he can spawn in 10 of them, or else you will die to his server breakers. And obviously at half HP, or like at 30,000 HP, he will revive his HP and kill all your towers, but you do get 1,000,000 cash, so it kind of helps you more than hurts you. And Minish is not really that much of a problem. I already said this earlier, that he's more of a filler type of boss, especially when you have like 1,000,000 cash to rebuild your towers. But he can actually, I'm pretty sure Minish can take away your money as well, but it doesn't really matter that much. Ellernate is obviously the main showcase of the incident side mode. Final boss or not, he's just the one that has the most effort put into him. So if you've played the Road Rage side mode, you can pretty much already tell where this is going. Roadbringer, he's just honestly very painful to fight against, and that's because you fight him on wave 20, he goes hella fast, and he spawns in like 5 convertibles and 3 road ragers. And not even to mention that he can kill your towers by ramming into them, and even ram into you if you're not careful enough, and that launches you off the map. Roadbringer, even though he's a completely random boss, it's a dude in a road roller. I'm surprised that he's actually a tough challenge for a boss with only 100,000 HP. That just shows that you don't really need that much health in this game to be a challenge. You just need to have the most devastating attacks. And now we've got the master of all gears. We have Bloxxer. This man wields a demonic sword, a rocket launcher, sriracha sauce, and he even has his own side mode based on protecting him. Now, even though Bloxxer may not be a huge challenge by himself, I still think that he's a pretty fun boss to fight against because he just has a variety of attacks. He uses his sword to kill your towers. He launches an RPG at your towers, and he is the #1 boss that can kill your general. He always targets your strongest towers, so you might as well sell your general before he just gets obliterated every single time. And when he heals up, I mean, even though he does do that stupid leap backwards ability that he does, he has a sriracha sauce ability that heals him and makes him go faster, so he's not really like Swordmaster where he barely makes any progress like through the paths by just jumping backwards. I gotta say, Bloxxer is honestly probably the best boss in red mode. Aside from Doombringer, of course. I mean, obviously Doombringer is the #1 boss in red mode, if not the entire game, but we'll get into that later. And by later, I mean that he is the next thing up on this list, but we've got Doombringer. This guy, final boss of red mode, very iconic, if not the most iconic boss of this game. I know I've said that 100 times by now, and I know that I've pointed this out 100 times by now, but Doombringer, I mean, you've got to give it to the guy. He has 666,000 HP, he has his own cutscene. He used to be the only boss with a cutscene until, like, Bloxxer's Dream, but Doombringer, he bans your towers, he can summon lightning, he summons SWATs, and not to mention, when he's down to 150 HP, he jumps all the way back to the start, heals up to halfway, and tries to rush you without doing any attacks. Now, the problem with Doombringer is the fact that he goes back to the start. I feel like they should buff him by just him having to heal up at the spot that he's at, you know, like not jumping back to the start, because that's just way too easy. If you've already shredded like 75% of his HP, then it would just be way easier to kill him like when he's at half HP, when he's at the start of the map. But anyways, Doombringer used to be the hardest boss and still respectively has that if you discount any like side modes and stuff, but I think that there's way harder bosses now. And now for the second boss with a unique mechanic, we have Frosty, not the Frosty from Tower Battles, but Frosty the Snowman in Doomspire Defense with 2 million HP. I think this is the second boss with the most health in the game so far, but Frosty, I mean, he comes out of the ground and he doesn't really follow the path in the event. He more so is a supporting boss that summons these really tanky snow golems and snow abominations that can kill you eventually if you aren't like targeting them first. And he also freezes your towers, but overall, Frosty is not really the real challenge of this wave. It's more so of the peons that he spam spawns, and they were trying to buff him at first, but they forget that this event was supposed to be designed for more intermediate players, so he's not really that hard, but he is a pretty fun boss to fight against, and can be a real challenge if you don't have good towers. And coming in at 3rd place, we've got the master of all attacks in Doomspire Defense up to the rewrites. We have the Party Ender with only 150,000 HP. He is the final boss of the Release Party Revenge, and also is kind of a very big part of the story in this game, if there even is any. But this man does every single attack that you can name of until the rewrite happened. He does like Doombringer's attacks, he can do Mad Scientist attacks, he can jump from path to path, he uses his fire extinguisher to blind your towers, and at half HP, his attack spam just gets way more hectic. So you probably want to spread your towers out for this one and not cluster them all in one spot like I did on the first try, but I beat him first try because I had good towers and a good team. But obviously grinding this event was pretty fun, and they didn't really intend for this guy to be too hard, even if the attack spam could be very overwhelming for some people. Now, Dignity is a hacker, another one of those hacker bosses, and he also is pretty much the strongest boss in the game by far, if you don't count what's about to happen in number 1. And I say this because I don't even know if the boss in number 1 is going to be there for long, but it's just safe to rank it in this video anyways. But Dignity himself, he spawns on Bloxxer's Dream on the Nightmare mode. He has 1.2 million HP, that's like almost 2 times the amount of Doombringer's HP, and he teleports around the map. Now, if you've played Bloxxer's Dream before, there's like there's 4 paths, and they all go in completely different directions, so it does help to have towers like in the middle, maybe have a general supporting them because he gives them range. But Dignity, he starts off pretty simple with his first phase. He's just a clone of John Doe with his abilities, and as you start to damage him more, he becomes more distorted and more like a fallen angel, and that's actually a part of the backstory with this boss. Now, as you get him down to like 400,000 or 500,000 HP, he starts to spawn in these demonic enemies, and God, these guys are really tough to kill. I don't know if it's their resistance or HP or their shield, but they go like stupidly fast on a map that's like Bloxxer's Dream with like barely any places to place towers in. And overall, Dignity, I mean, there are people that have soloed this, but me personally, this is really hard to beat, and I think for most people it is hard to beat because not everyone can solo this boss, you know. When I did this first try on the stream that I did, he did get kind of far. Like, I'm pretty sure he was not that far off of getting to the exit, so definitely deserves this spot on the list, but it's just sad to see him get crushed by a troll boss. Do I even need to say anything for this boss? But at number 1, obviously we have the Abyss with 6 million HP. Is an exact copy of the Void from Tower Battles, but with Doombringer's abilities, and he's a pretty challenging boss to fight against unless you're Phantom Cammy, but he can stun your towers, he can go after you, and if you get hit by his hammer, then you lose money, and if you're standing on top of towers, then, well, he also kills them as well, and you don't get your money back. So good luck trying to beat this guy with 6 million HP on a map that's literally 2 base plates and a bridge in the middle with like 4 paths on each side, so there's 8 paths or 9 paths total, and he goes in a completely straight line. Not to mention, he also spawns guardians, the same enemies from Tower Battles, that also kill and stun your towers. It's just a handful for a boss and really deserves number 1. I honestly don't know if this guy is going to be in the game for any longer, because keep in mind, they didn't really ask permission to make this guy, but I don't think Planet cares too much about this because, I mean, Tower Battles, when's the last time you seen the game update? So honestly, there's a bunch of fan-made games anyways, so Abyss might be staying in the game for as long as Doomspiredefense lives on, but who knows? We only have to wait and find out if they will add like a harder boss. I doubt it though. 6 million is a lot of HP because the highest normal boss so far is Frosty, and even then he's pretty easy to kill because he's slow as hell and doesn't even follow the path. Okay, so I think that was like 40 plus bosses that we ranked. Sorry if this video took like 3 weeks to make. This is my longest video that I've ever made on this game and this channel by far. And as I was making this, I sort of got sick and things just happened. You know, I had to switch editors and everything. Everything just went downhill as I was making this video. But anyways, if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe if you want. And hopefully, I'll get back to uploading normally again. Hopefully. But anyways, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.
厳重な作品時々あの日を経験していなかったが俺は今どうなってたかって考えることがある。